Hello folks, how are we doing? I'm just playing. I've got the Lyra 8, which is the drone synth, and I was just playing with it. Bonkers, almost totally impenetrable initially, because I don't know how it works, because it's very unfamiliar territory. But the bottom end on it is completely bonkers. Essentially, we've got 8 tunable oscillators. And a very noisy delay and a distortion. Very unusual. Trying to figure out how it works, but it's actually quite difficult, to be honest. What I do know is that you can't. I thought it had a CV in, which it does, but I thought that would mean that it would it would enable you to pitch the individual oscillators and sort of play the whole intervals, but it doesn't operate in quite that way. Is it DC coupled? I have no idea. I mean, this oscillator is at about 1 o'clock, so I could go. It goes pretty low. Distortion is we were listening to it on the speakers in here, and it was shaking the room. It's sort of not a lot of room left for any other stuff in here, but uncontrollable in many ways, but it's very experimental, shall we say. But it's nice to have something a bit different to the usual fodder, although it's obviously great to be reviewing synthesizers. Sometimes it's nice to have something completely different. On that note, I did get an email from people today saying that they're hopefully going to send me the granular synth, the GR1, the tasty chips, but it's not going to be till next month, so not sure quite how that's going to work out. No level of individual oscillators, just these sort of fixed envelopes, waveforms. All right, let's see if I can. So it goes, I think, from sine through to square wave. I'm not sure what they're beating. Yeah, it's completely bonkers. I need to have a really good look at it. Lee Kemp. Any other? Distortion is very intense. Yeah. Okay, I'm just sort of following up the chat rooms, but it is a very interesting sound. Very specific. I mean, you're not going to use it in your synth pop duo, probably. I can't figure out whether it's digital or analog, because sometimes when I turn the knobs nothing happens for a bit, so I'm wondering what's inside. It weighs an absolute ton. It's built like a tank. Very tight reverb. And delay modulation. Yeah, some pretty mad stuff. Bit of noise coming in there. I think that might be the feedback. The feedback is quite bonkers. Anyway, how is everybody? We may, although I did just get a call from Mr. Non-Eric from Muso Talk, that he might not be able to make it. He's held up, and he was in the Q-1, so he's hoping to be back in time. But failing that, we'll have all our usual guests. What's it called to? I hope that the timing, because I haven't heard back from any of them. So I'm not quite sure who's going to show up where. Maybe they haven't got the emails. I hope they have, but I think they are. Anyway, we'll just have to wing it, because I'm not quite sure why I haven't heard back from anybody, but we'll see. Let's have a look. So, what else has been going on? You probably see... Oh, you can't see in the background there. There's a little yellow square. I've been looking at the Analog Solutions fuse box. There'll be a review coming along there quite soon. And then I'll probably get onto the Lyra 8, and I've also got, I think I'll probably do the SH01A first of the boutiques that I've got, and then see how I get on, because it's rapidly heading towards Christmas. It doesn't, I mean, it's not like I can get a synth and review it in the next couple of days. I like to live with it for a while, maybe a couple of weeks, and then kind of just get into it as I've fathomed out what it can and can't do. Let's see, have we got all our levels? Yeah, levels are all there and good. So I think we're nearly ready for it. It's just need some guests. It wouldn't be the first time. Anyway. Oh, yes, I can hear that rather intrusive, weird noise. I think that's probably the, I don't know if you can hear that whining hiss. It sounds like just dirty delay. Self-generating delay sounds. There's nothing actually going. It's almost like mixer feedback, kind of. So I'm not actually playing any notes. But yeah, very weird sounds. Like it. You crank the distortion up. Really, really weird stuff. So yeah, not too big on the general synthesis features, but that's the Lyra 8. I'll see if I can find a picture of it, because I haven't got a camera set up over it. Lyra 8. I know I've talked about it a few times. Soma Laboratory Lyra 8. Here it is. That's what it looks like. I wonder if we can make that bigger. Can we make that bigger? No, we can't. We can probably just do it like that. Oops. Organismic synthesizers. There we go. So those little pads, you kind of put your finger on it and make the connection between the two steel plates, and that triggers one of those 8 oscillators. And then up the top there, you've got this kind of multifunction LFO, which you can use to modulate the frequency and or the time of the delay, which is a twin delay, which sounds a bit like a kind of cheapo, kind of dirty digital delay. But like I say, this thing is built like a tank. It weighs absolutely a lot more than you'd think it would. Synthomatemy in the YouTube chat room, just reviewing the Noizoid MMO3, which is quite special without filter. So let's have a look and see what that is. Noizoid, how do we spell that? Noizoid MM. See what I can find that in. That's this thing. 32-bit microcontroller. All right, it looks a little bit. Oh, it's like a. I see. It's like a PCB mounted type thing. Looks a little bit like a cross between a Volca and a Little Bits. I wonder what that sounds like. Let's have a look. Let's see what it is. Semi-modular synthesizer, 3 oscillators, multiple modulations, wave shaper. Sounds quite similar to what I've been doing. There's mine. That's theirs. Interesting. So it's got 3 oscillators, 3 LFOs. Yeah, I can hear quite a lot of tasty bottom end in there. Ouch, that's a bit of cross mod, I guess. I wonder if it's an actual analog. Is it analog? Monophonic stereo. It sounds like it might be digital, possibly. I don't know. Sounds are freaking out your cat lady aptitude, are they? Sorry to hear that. I'm not surprised though, because they are pretty weird. Let's move it on a bit. So it doesn't look like it's got any kind of filter, as you say, so it's all about cross mod, which is definitely an interesting way, but you do tend to get those kind of quite harsh, edgy sounds out of it. Out of synths that do that, rather than it. So you get wave shaping. Hard to know exactly what you're going to use that for. Today's audio is from Forbidden Planet. Yeah, it does seem to be. Yeah, not sure how much I would find that personally all that useful. Very West Coast sounding. Oh, it's got. Looks like that's a MIDI input. What's it got going? Just an output audio volume. Interesting. Well, I'll be interested to see what that review comes out like. Synth Anatomy. Thanks for letting us know. We have Mr. Richard Hilton. Happy birthday. Shall I try and play you Happy Birthday on my new synth? Ready?
Oh, please do. Oh, please do.
Doesn't really do that melodic stuff, I'm afraid. I expect you'll be able to do better. Play yourself Happy Birthday. Oh, that's a bit sad. I feel guilty now. So you did get the link, because I got a call from Non-Eric, who said he was stuck in town and he hadn't received the link. So I don't know what happened there. So hoping it all comes.
I got an hour ago or something when you sent it.
Yeah, cool. What's your time zone at the moment? How are you doing time-wise? What time is it at your yard?
It's equalized itself back to normal time pretty much everywhere, as far as I know, whatever that means. In other words, we are now back to being 5 hours difference apart.
Okay.
And we're coming up on 11 a.m. right now, whereas last week we were coming up at 12 noon right now.
Understand. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Right.
Yeah,
so,
we switch later than you guys. We switch back later, and I think we start earlier. It's all about, I don't know, costs of heating and things like that. But
I thought it was to do with milkmen and farmers. That's what I was told. Yeah, but it's probably not the case. But it would make more sense, I guess. Well, if they shift the time, then you don't get the economy heating or the economy electricity. I don't know if that works in America, but in the UK, there used to be, I don't know if it still is, a kind of economy. If you used electricity during, between midnight and 5 in the morning, you get the electricity cheaper because it was over capacity and you'd just be drained. And so what we have are these kind of storage heaters, which are filled up with bricks and bits of wire that just heat up, kind of old school style, and then release their heat during the day. But you have to be very up together. You can't just nip in and go, oh, I'm chilly, can I turn the heater on? It's like, no, I didn't turn it on yesterday, and therefore it's not been releasing its heat all day. So I don't know if that's...
My friend in Wales, with whom I stayed once, has a coal-burning stove in the front, cast iron. This thing has to be close to 100 years old. Cast iron coal-burning stove in the front that is essentially his heating system. And each morning they get up, he feeds that thing coal, and turns on some form of water pumping, which then takes the heated water and distributes it through the radiators in this very small building. But there's nothing like that around here, or where I grew up. But I see where it comes from, and it makes perfect sense. And in his case, it saves him a ton of money, I guess, because he gets.
I would imagine so. It's very. Yeah. I did look into this because we had our fireplaces converted. Welcome to Heating Talk, episode 1.
Yeah, right.
We had I thought about putting something behind the heating that would feed hot water into the system, but there's all these. The thing that costs the most amount of money with that stuff is you need to have all this. Oh, Gaz, you're coming back at me loud. Hello.
Are on.
Your speakers are. There he is.
One moment.
Okay, no problem. I'll carry on with my not very interested, but because basically you put a fire and you've got a vessel to heat water, the problem is the fire will heat the water to such a kind of ridiculously high volume that you've got to have all these kind of release valves, and you can't put water temperature into the system at at 400 degrees or superheated, all of that stuff. So what I thought was a really cheap idea turned out to be completely impractical. And unless I built it myself and risked blowing the house up and taking down the entire terrace, it wasn't really worthwhile.
Is this coming through?
Hello, 1 2.
Is that 1 2? Is that coming through?
Yeah, that's fine. That's working great.
Hey,
Gaz.
Oh, great. Ace. Cool.
Hello, Gaz. Let me just make sure you got heating for you. Got heating on the brain. Me and Rich have just been talking about heating systems, which I'm guessing is
Sonic Talk Home Improvement.
Sonic DIY, yeah, or not even Sonic. Forget the Sonic, just home improvement stuff.
Would it be?
So yeah, we got you. Would it
be bad form to eat Marks and Spencer egg custard tart?
I don't know. It depends how you feel about it. Depends how messy. What a kind of messy eater you are.
Egg custard tart.
Probably not.
I got the Gentle Giant 3-piece suite coming tomorrow, Rich. I'm looking forward to listening to that. Have you heard that yet?
I haven't, and in fact, I have a copy sitting right here somewhere, waiting to be played. But no, I haven't. I haven't actually listened to it yet. I think I know what's on it.
I don't know what this language is. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the first 3 Gentle Giant albums, they didn't have the masters for all the multi-tracks for all of the tracks, so they've made a hybrid album of the tracks. These were albums from 1970 through to about 1971, I think. 1971. But remixed by Stephen Wilson. Stephen Wilson of Porcupine Tree and solo fame. He has become like the master prog surround sound mixer. But I think
there's a niche. The only problem is with being the master surround sound prog mixer is you only get to mix an album once every 17 years because it takes that long to finish. Sorry, Gaz, that was very rude of me. Carry on.
But I just wonder as well, though, I mean, going back to those multi-tracks from 1970, 1971 or whatever, and, what kind of processes go on, what he does with the tracks. I'm quite interested to hear them, really. I remember listening a few years back to, they did it with, not with Stephen Wilson, but they did it with the early Peter Gabriel Genesis albums, actually, and some of the Phil Collins ones too. And I listened to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, which is a personal fave of mine. I just didn't really like it. It's almost one of those things where whatever nuance or flaws or whatever it is on the original, you just accept as what it is. So
and you sort of miss them. You miss the imperfection or the
yeah.
Did you hear his mix of The Power and the Glory in 5.1?
No, I've not heard that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I had
Can I
similar experience.
can I just ask you a
I had a
question?
similar experience to yours.
Can I just ask Gaz? Can I just ask you, have you got some kind of a microphone under your beard because it's kind of going?
Oh, it's the beard little.
Maybe if you just clip it onto your beard rather than. Oh no, it's not. Maybe not.
I've just worked out what a brilliant little stash it is in there for anything.
Yeah.
If you needed to, if I don't know what on earth you might ever need to
Pinhole
stash in
camera.
there, but yeah.
Provisions.
Family.
Looks like we have Mr. Non-Eric as well. He's just getting ready, so we have a full collection. Oh, he's got a shotgun mic and everything. Hey,
Ooh.
Mr. Non-Eric, you're just waiting for your audio.
Don't hear that shotgun mic though.
No audio coming through yet. So Mr. Non-Eric is using a similar system to us and probably doesn't use it for going out as much as everyone else. So he's got that thing where he's got to set his browser to accept the input from the audio card, and then we'll probably have to restart his browser and click the link again.
I can't get mine to not take the audio interface anymore.
Oh, really?
I can't. My browser refuses to acknowledge the internal microphone of my iMac.
Oh, really? Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that.
That's
So we'll
all
just let Mr. Non-Eric continue his wend his way. I think he's done his thing. So we can see he's done that frozen. As though he's not reaching for his shutdown. So I will see. He's probably just quit his browser. So we're just running a couple of minutes late because Non-Eric got caught up in traffic and he's managed to join us. But we haven't had him for ages. It'd be great to catch up. So it'll be awesome and everything.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, Gaz, what I've got.
1, 2, 3.
There
check.
we go. We have. Here we go. Yeah, it's working.
Great. You know what I had to do? It didn't work in Chrome, but it works in Firefox. I couldn't select the microphone or the cam. But in Firefox, I just tried Firefox. It works crazy.
Okay.
Instant. Interesting. You're a bit low, though. You look a little bit like Where's Waldo? There we go. Now you're a bit high. I'm just such a perfectionist. There we go. We got him. We have everybody. Mr. Non-Eric from Music Talk, Gaz Williams, and Hilton.
Yep.
I just wanted to play. I've got this Lyra 8.
Oh!
Really weird.
Well,
and
jealous.
Almost
Jealous.
impossible to use, but we'll perhaps get onto more of that later. Right, we could do a show, so let's see how we go. Everybody ready? Non-Eric, you good to go?
Just a quick reminder to call me Non-Eric in the show, just to not confuse the audience.
I have. I've been doing that. I've been doing it religiously so far today, at least.
Very good.
But also, it means that we can do our little falls up shot, which I stole from you, Non-Eric. I saw it on your Muso Talk, and I thought, I'll have that. That's a great shot.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I got inspired by your logo to have it a bit more round and circular and stuff.
Oh man, it's a love fest. Right, let's get ready to go. So here we go. Standing by.
Yep.
Sonic Talk.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sonic Talk episode. Oh, there's some noise coming through on other people's microphone. Episode. That's me. I do beg your pardon. Let me just fix that. Everybody, and welcome to Sonic Talk. That's the return from Facebook. The Facebook streaming interface is a nightmare. Anyway. Hello, welcome to Sonic Talk, the podcast that talks about all things to do with music technology. Today we're recording episode 512 on, Wednesday, November the 8th. So this is streaming via YouTube and also by Facebook Live. Welcome. Those of you who would like to, you can join us on the IRC chat room, sonicstate.com/live for details of that. And also via the YouTube chat room. We've got, as I like to say and often do, a fulsome chat room on from everywhere. So yes, very pleased to see you. So we also want to say thank you very much to our sponsors for the competition this week. Isotope will be giving away a copy of Ozone 8. So if you want to join in with that competition, just stay tuned. It happens somewhere around halfway around the show. So, as always, a pleasure. Let's start with Mr. Non-Eric from musotalk.tv. Just caught him there whipping his glasses off. Non-Eric, of course, does a very similar sort of vibe to us. He's got a kind of music technology and music production podcast and media production setup over there in Berlin in Germany. How on earth are you, Mr. Non-Eric?
Relatively fine. I would say
excellent.
Medium.
Medium. I'm sorry, it's only medium. That's not what we want to hear. So what's been happening in on musotalk.tv recently? Anything exciting?
Well, we finally just released the second part of our Hackintosh trial to trying to build a cheaper computer, faster computer, more reliable computer, something that doesn't heat up or breaks down, but runs Mac OS software. And that was online on Monday, and there will be a third part. And I'm thinking of doing a benchmark. Maybe it would be interesting to find out if Cubase on Windows or Cubase on OS X is more efficient or not. Because here we have exactly the same hardware, and we can side by side try out.
That sounds like a great one. I might have to quiz you a bit about that later once we've introduced the rest of our guests. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And also we have Mr. Gaz Williams, producer, bass player, music technologist over there in Bristol in his rooftop studio. Just launched your album, I believe. I did see a little bit of the live stream, and you were hatted up. You look kind of quite wizardy.
Actually, someone thought I was, not at this gig, but at another gig, thought I was Roy Wood's sort of son. So that's very wizardy.
Better than brother.
Yeah, actually, yeah. The album's out now. Asteroid Deluxe, The Lawn. Yeah, really excited, actually. That launch was brilliant. Really enjoyed that. And we had like live visuals. Yeah, it was a really cool. So please go out and buy it. We got it on vinyl as well. So it's on Bandcamp, Asteroid Deluxe. Bandcamp.com /Asteroid Deluxe. Sorry, I'm sure you can figure that out.
I'm sure we'll find it. Anyway, Gaz, thank you very much for joining us. And also, we have Mr. Rich Hilton, who is of the birthday inclination today. I believe, is it actually today your birthday, Rich?
Today is my birthday.
Bless you, sir.
Hey!
Many happy returns to you. Happy birthday to you. There we go. There we go.
And so forth.
Thank you, fellas.
And so far.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
that too.
You. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not sure which one is worse for copyright infringement, because I think there was a problem there with both, to be perfect. Anyway, Rich, how are you? I guess you've been back for a little bit of a week. I was going to try and play you Happy Birthday on the Lyra, but it doesn't seem to be able to actually play anything of any pitch value whatsoever without pre-tuning it. Anyway, how are you, Rich? You well?
Yeah, I'm old.
Older.
That's how I am.
How about less young? That sounds like a better,
something like
maybe
that.
a better way of looking at it. Glass half full, glass half empty.
It's a beautiful
and all that
thing.
stuff.
I'm very thankful, and have been shown enormous amounts of love already today. So it's just incredible, really. One thing about social media is people do have the opportunity to acknowledge each other on days like this, and sometimes it's like, oh my goodness. I mean, you just don't think about the world like that there's these people out there who actually care. Yeah, I don't know, it's great. It's amazing.
No, that is really good. I must admit, it does make you feel much more wanted and kind of, just remembered, and not so when you come down and you open that packet of socks once again for the forthcoming year, and you just think, oh, I'm sure you got better gifts than that. Anyways.
I've actually got Prime Acoustics recoil stabilizers coming for my speakers.
What the hell? Are they things that you put your speakers on to kind of
Yes.
isolate them?
Yes. And apparently they make a huge difference. And furthermore, they'll angle the speakers slightly down. And given that they're kind of sitting high up here, that'll give it a nice perspective. I'm really quite looking forward to this.
Is that your birthday present to yourself?
It is. It is.
Excellent.
Well, so don't tell my wife. It's from my wife.
Ah, she doesn't know yet.
Well, she does know.
Okay.
But I just, we do that. We'll make it easy on each other occasionally when there is actually something you can come up with that you want. You'll say, "Hey, I've got your birthday present idea right here."
Oh, well, that's good. And it's also really nice because, I mean, my family, I've got a 14-year-old daughter and my missus, and obviously we're not terribly wealthy or anything. So anything to do with music technology is pretty much forget about it as a gift. And so I try and kind of steer towards other less high ticket value items. So, so anyway, but happy birthday to you, Rich. Pleasant.
Thank you.
And well, I suppose we could celebrate also another kind of 10, which is this one. This is news. Ableton Live 10 dropped last week. I think it's fair to say a lot of the stuff has really been happening under the hood more than anything else. But there are quite a lot of new features and new kind of tweaks and devices and what have you. This is the Wavetable synth, which also has an expandable GUI, which is something that I think is really cool and something that I'd like to see more of because I am sick to death of trying to edit things in that tiny little bay at the bottom. I mean, you can stretch it up, I suppose. And there's a Stomp Pot Crunch pedal, it's called. I think there's also a drum bus, a really cool looking echo, and numerous other things. I'm not going to play all of it because, A, I'm supposed to say that for every single video, and B, that on the face of it, it doesn't look like perhaps the biggest of updates. I know, Mr. Non-American, are you a user or are you not?
No, I'm clean.
You're clean from live, are you?
I'm not a user. No, I have it's difficult for me to work in the concept of the Clips concept of Ableton, but they have a big show here on the weekend called the Loop.
Oh yeah, Loop. Yeah.
And there will be a chance, of course, for me, I hope, to take a look at Ableton 10. Vanessa, if you are listening and watching the Sonicstate podcast, you will receive a very late email from me asking for permission to come down. So this is my way of talking myself into the show, I hope. And yeah, it would be great to maybe talk to the engineers, because as you said, there's probably a lot more happened under the hood in terms of, cleaning up the software. After a couple of years, you always have to sort of clean up what is under the hood. The new features that went on top, like the new synths and the drum bus and everything, well, that's not extremely exciting, but I guess it will be all very, very important to people who use Live regularly or that are users.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think, as you say, there's been a lot going on under the hood. And also, one of the big deals is the integration of Max for Live within Suite. And I was talking to developers at We Are Robots, because I went there last week and I talked on a panel. I'll perhaps get a chance to mention a bit more about that later. And they were all saying their Max for Live devices were loading kind of like 10 times faster. The CPU load was, 5 times less. I mean, really kind of significant differences. And as we found with as people are creating more and more interesting complex devices, such as our Wave Junction, bit of a plug there, then, the CPU load is going to come down enormously. And that's kind of cool.
Wow.
Gaz, you've used, oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, but I just wanted to explain. It's the same that kind of happened with Logic. If you use Logic regularly, there's all these updates. Okay, they have a couple of more instruments, but I realized, especially in the last 2 updates with Logic, there have been significant improvement in under the hood, like latency compensation now works and other stuff. A lot of terrible problems got ironed out, and they didn't even talk about it. And I think it's the same more or less with Ableton 10.
Yeah, I think it's quite a big deal. Gaz, I noticed a sharp intake of breath when I said, perhaps it wasn't such a significant update on the face of it, but I think it probably is, right?
I think it's a huge update. I think it's excellent what they're doing with this one. One of the really big ones, which for me is one of the really big ones, but is right down in the in the headlining, so the headline grabbing, is the changes to the arrange window. So the arrange window is becoming so much better with Live 10. Notably, just things like zoom controls, being able to time stretch directly. Previously, you've always had to still use the kind of clip editor down the bottom. But now, you can just snip a piece, stretch it within the editor. Okay,
you mean like
deal,
a proper
that's just
DAW?
like exactly. So this is why this stuff is right down the list, because it's just bringing it in line with what you'd kind of expect it to be able to do. But non-Eric has mentioned, the focus generally with Ableton is on the clip view, but I particularly love the arrange view. It's just such a streamlined, really nice, fast sort of environment for working within. So these sort of small adjustments have got actually huge repercussions in terms of the workflow there. So that's pretty cool. And also, I mean, I think the way that they've just really kept to that vision. I've been using Ableton Live since version 2, and I've always really enjoyed the updates. And it should be mentioned as well, it's quite interesting how they've taken an awful long time now in the development cycle before going to a major. Is it 4.5 years? And it was about
it's about 4.5 years. Yeah. But I mean, to be fair, this is one thing people it's going to be, what is it, $239 or 180 odd quid. It's not totally fine, and people go, it's too much. But when you think about the amount of updates that have happened to Live 9 over that 4-year period, where you haven't had to pay anything else, it's actually, it's not a significant price.
Well, and the inclusion of Max for Live, then, that's a. I mean, gosh, look what that brings. If you haven't got the Live suite, that is, I think it's an enormous.
Well, you don't get Max for
upgrade.
Hold on, you don't get Max for Live in all versions. It's only no, you don't.
No, you do.
You do. I've double checked that.
Double checked. Are you sure?
I spoke to
standard. Okay.
Yeah, that's not the case, but the Max for Live integration has been completely reworked so that it's much more efficient. I wouldn't be surprised that perhaps over the next, 12 months or whatever, at some point they will introduce like a player type technology where you don't get to edit the Max for Live stuff, but you can run the Max for Live stuff in lower versions. That would make a lot of sense, but I don't know whether that's the case. I mean, it's certainly not on the road.
Sorry, I'm wrong there. I am wrong.
But but it is a lot more efficient and betterer. I think that, and also we've got the groups within groups. I don't use groups all that much, but apparently they're very useful.
No,
so
I mean, you could. One thing that's been missing in Live and still is sort of missing, is like a kind of take editor. But with this groups within groups, you can sort of get around it. You can sort of do it now. If you were just to put all your vocal takes within a group with, and then especially in the arrange editor, the way that you can now adjust the arrange editor and cut and slide things. So I'm looking forward to trying that stuff out. Definitely.
I know, Rich, I don't know if you're much of an Ableton Live user. I mean, I'm sure you use it, you are familiar with it, but I don't know. I'm making an assumption here. Now I'm thinking perhaps you are a user of Ableton Live.
Yeah, sometimes. I like it. I love it.
Thoughts on the update? No, you aren't muted.
Okay, good. I can't take a shot then. It looks like a very nice update. Love the new fonts. What I'm noticing is that a lot of these promotional materials, and this one is included in that, emphasize young people who want to build up an entire track very quickly in almost real time in this sort of what I call post Jacob Collier world, where and this is part of the whole looper pedal methodology is wrapped up in all this as well. But there seems to be an emphasis now on exactly what Live had been designed to do from the start, which is building up a lot of stuff live. And I thought the promo effectively demonstrated that as their emphasis. And it seems to me that the feature bumps that we've all discussed already are really interesting and cool. And a couple of new instruments, that's always nice.
They
really do get a lot of They get a
Yeah.
lot of mileage out of their real estate with respect to giving you controls that do a lot of things in a pretty small amount of space. And I think that it kind of encourages one to work in certain ways, particularly on the clips page, that gets you slightly different results than when you're working linearly all the time. That said, it's also cool that they're making all these improvements to the linear page where you can do all these other kinds of edits that Gaz described. And apparently there's a whole lot of more automation stuff, and being able to tie, I guess, automation to the warp points is something new. I guess I haven't automated too many mixes in Ableton Live, but if it's new, that's wonderful, because yeah, you'd want to be able to do that. And looks nice. It seems like a bunch of money, but it looks nice. And anybody who wants to continue to work in that format, and like you say, it's been years of updates for free. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
Good
part of
on
it's
them.
also, I think part of it's also the fact that it's now fully 64-bit. There were a couple of things that were missing that I thought would have been really nice to get, and one of them was first, the push integration is deeper, so you get much more pretty graphics on the screen, certainly for some of the new instances, the new devices. But when you're working with macros, and I've banged on about this loads, you only get knobs. There's no button macros. Yes, you can use a MIDI controller to have a button and have a 0 and a 128 value. But if you're using push and you have a knob, you just want an on-off type thing on the macros in racks, you have to you set the range to 0 to 1, but it means that the push requires a full rotation of the knob to go from 0 to 1. You can't just kind of go on off, and that seems that's one thing. Another thing for me is I want the option to have a really big bar counter, because quite often you might be using it live and it's really hard to see where you are. And also a time display, because you can't tell, it's just sort of, you're going along and you go, how long's these clips run for? And you don't know. It's just in terms of bars. There's no way of saying, it's 15 minutes or, 30 seconds or whatever. And those are kind of things that, just little things. But I think we're going to probably see a lot more extra bits and bobs. Gaz, I'll come back to you. What would you like to see that you didn't?
I thought you can see the time on the bottom line. The bars are on the top and the time is along the bottom.
I stand corrected. I'm not a power user or particularly.
Were you talking about the range of view though?
No, I was talking about clip view.
Oh, okay. I think it might do it in clip as well, but I'd have to check that. What would I like to see in it? Gosh, it's a funny one. It's like, it's always been this thing with live, what I don't want to see with it really. And that's a sort of opposite question, but I'm really glad that they've kind of still maintained that clean, crisp vision of it and haven't overloaded it with options and stuff. And what I would like to see in it though, is a Melodyne type functionality, I think. Right. Because if like pitch editing is still a little bit funny. You can do it in a way, but I'd love to see or even, what is that, Melodyne integration? I can't remember what it's
API,
called.
yeah, you can do the API.
ARA or whatever it's called. Something like that. I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. You're not much of a user, but it is quite important, isn't it? With that you try and maintain the things that make the DAW, particularly with live, which is a very different sort of vibe to many other sort of just regular NLE stuff, apart from maybe Bitwig, but that's a kind of separate case, I suppose.
I think it's very interesting, and I'd like to elaborate on what Gaz said. It's great that they sort of stick to their, when you look at stick to their concept, and when you look at version 1 and version 10, you will immediately recognize the program, because it's basically the same look, the same feel, the same concept. They have been able to withstand the thrust, to make it into a DAW like any other. There were at some time, I think in version 7, 8, when they had orchestral instruments and other stuff, I was getting worried that it would, turn into another Cubase or another Logic in terms of concept. But they have been sticking to their concept, elaborated on that, created hardware like Push and really sort of stuck to what is their core. And when you look at the program like Logic, for example, it changed. We have a split main screen now. We have, it looks different, no change, so I think that's very interesting that they have sort of managed to really withstand all the how's it say in English? Versuchungen.
Yes, I know what you mean. Actually, I don't know what you mean, but we'll just guess.
Temptations. I got
Temptations.
it. The temptations.
Temptations. Yes.
The temptation to fuck about with the concept and try to be everything. Everything that everybody else is also at. So they've got their unique spot in the market. They have a unique concept. Maybe Bitwig is pretty close. It's kind of very close in a way. They try to go in that direction, but it's great.
Yeah, no, I absolutely
hope
agree.
To see more of it on weekend. I hope.
Well, I hope so too. Oh, actually, that's at Funkhouse, isn't it? Which is always nice to get a chance to go to a trip down there. So, just to say, I think that they've said rather vaguely, you can sign up to the beta test now if you've got an Ableton Live account, a 9 account. It doesn't have to be Suite, but you can get a 10, which is a great way of hooking people in and then getting them to buy. It's going to be available Q1, which could be anywhere between January and March. So, there is a bit of leeway there. Looks like the upgrading is going to be from, if you're at 9 Suite and you want to go to 10 Suite, looks like it's going to be around 180 quid or $240. And that's got like a 20% discount, I think, at this stage. So I'm not quite sure. We're not quite sure what that is going to work out at, but it's definitely coming, and I'm sure there will be iterations, because obviously with that long a period, there's probably features in there that may or may not make the cut or might be introduced or whatever. We don't know, but it's kind of big news because 4.5 years since the last major update. So I'm just going to drop a little bit of a word from our friends at Isotope now, because we've been going for almost half an hour. Of course, Ozone 8, the kind of de facto, and Neutron 2, in fact, de facto mastering and sort of finalizing end of your processing chain. Got lots and lots of great features. Master Assistant, which allows you to kind of start the process kind of depending on where you want to end up, and gives you some really good starting points that you can then work from or use in total. The ability to communicate between instances of Ozone 8 and Neutron 2 in the same session, so you can actually adjust aspects of the mix. The spectral shaping, which gives you the kind of the parameters work within depending on the kind of music that you're working in. It's all very interesting machine learning technology, lots of really kind of cutting edge stuff in here. Of course, Ozone, as with many Isotope products, is available at get 10-day download, where you can check it out and see whether or not it's going to work for you, and then it's fully functioning. So if you want to try Ozone 8, which I know lots and lots and lots of people are just kind of they swear by it for their mastering. Also, I forgot to mention, you can actually have I think it's a folder full of tracks that you can compare and contrast between. So you can, if you're trying to go for a specific sound, just makes all that stuff a lot easier. Anyway, Ozone 8 from Isotope. If you go to isotope.com/ozone, you'll be able to download the copy and check it out for yourself. And of course, we got a competition. Last week we asked for the hashtag expert mastering Ozone 8, and we got a winner, and the winner is Nate Master Flex. So the Twitter handle is @NateMasterFlex. So you know who you are. If you are hearing this, then please do get in touch and we'll pass you on to Isotope and they'll give you a copy of Ozone 8. Congratulations for winning. And of course, we also have another competition we're running this week. I thought I'd use this as an homage to our naming conventions, possibly, that we sometimes use for our final file. So if you want to win Ozone 8 this week, I'm looking for the hashtag final mix, not final mix 2 or anything like that, just final mix, and the hashtag Ozone 8 to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. That's on Twitter. That's the hashtag final mix, the hashtag Ozone 8 to @Sonicstate and @Isotope Inc. And that's thank you very much to Isotope for continuing to provide prizes for the show and just supporting us generally. Very much appreciated. All right, what was next? Okay. Slightly abstract. This is called XBay. Now,
motherfucker.
Excuse me. I don't want to have to
Sorry.
put parental tags on this.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, shit.
So this is the X-Bay system, which is basically an analog mod matrix, or a routing matrix, which says analog CV, any external gear. It also comes with the I think they're X mod cards, so you could get various different synthesizer aspects in there as well. So the whole thing can be kind of self-contained or interface with external gear, all done via this software side of things, and completely recool. You don't need cables because it all basically works within these 16 or up to 256 analog patch bays. Now, I'm trying to find. I did actually have the. Let me just get the page up because I think it seemed to have closed that tab. But basically, this is the Kickstarter. They just launched yesterday. It's not actually had. Oops. Let me find that. Excuse me. I do beg your pardon. I just pasted Gentle Giant into the search bar, which is not what I was looking
Hey! Yes,
Right.
it is what you're looking for.
Let me see if I can get the page up. So, yeah, this is X-Bay. They're looking for a bunch of money to get started. But the idea is, and I think it's, unfortunately, it seems to be displayed in a rather dry fashion. But actually, I think this could be a very, very powerful new system. And the idea is that you can, you've got a completely flexible analog patch bay with up to 256 by 256 matrix, which is quite a lot. And you've also got the ability to, I believe, attenuate and route and sum and split and all of those things. But combined with these Xmod cards, you could have a completely self-contained synthesizer. I mean, they're pushing it at the Eurorack people because obviously, you know, we won't necessarily want to have all those cables lying around. I detected there, Mr. Non-Eric, that you perhaps were not quite so excited by the prospect. I think they haven't sold it well, but I think actually it could be a really big deal.
Sorry about that. We don't have these parental here in Germany, so I'm sorry, slipped. Sorry, didn't want to kill your show.
You have to wear a special hat. Bad.
It was very, very hard for me to find out what this thing actually does, because it's very confusing. You know, it's a patch bay with no converters, but it's also a synthesizer. But I think it could also be very interesting for everybody using a DAW who has a lot of external gear. You know, not only just patching a synthesizer together, you could use it to just have an audio interface with 8 inputs and not out, but you have a lot of external gear, like Thorsten from Tangent Dream.
Exactly.
We went to
carry on. Sorry, I'm
we went to
not giving you the delay.
We went to his studio, and he showed us how he produced a score for the movie Cargo, and he has all his synthesizers all connected. And what he needs, he has, I think, 3 audio interfaces, 8 channel interfaces, and also another external Mackie mixer, 32 channels, to feed that all into his Cubase, you know, to have everything connected and working all the time. So I could see that maybe I think it's technically possible to use this machine to actually control all of this, and maybe just use a single 8-channel interface, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it absolutely is. I mean, at a very base level, you could have a 16 by 16, which I think is the smallest it comes. It goes 16, 16, 32 by 32. I guess it goes up 64 by 64, and then 256. I mean, this is starting to get very expensive. And the thing about the Kickstarter is pretty. What they really needed to do is have a system actually up and working with somebody explaining what's going on, because there are too many options here, and it's really difficult to decipher. But as far as I can tell, it looks like around about €1,000 will get you a 32 by 32 system, which isn't on the face of it. You know, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually what it can do for you could be extremely powerful, as you say, and to be able to route multiple ins and outs, and you get decent. I think there's some pictures here of, you know, what the kind of rough concept of it is. Let me just see if I can find them. There's a picture of it at the back. So you've got all these cards that you stick in, which are these switching matrix, but then you've got these additional cards which can be actual just synthesizer modules, like 3340 voices, filters, all that kind of stuff, and they get accessed via the matrix as well. And let me see, I'm just looking for the picture at the back of the unit. Yeah, so you've got D subs and you just break out the cables and connect it to your studio stuff. So yes, very powerful. I'm not heavily subscribed yet. I mean, Gaz, we're all very conscious of all the cables all over the place, and something like this where you have it all in one point could be very good. Of course, then you'd have to have the cables running to the place where the patch bay is, obviously. So you still need cables, but it's a step in the right direction, I think.
I'm hugely conflicted with this, actually, because I can see how impressive it is, but also there's something very boring about it as well. The way a big part of the fun of hardware is the physical interaction with it, and this is all entirely computer based, so it's almost like the worst of both worlds, isn't it? It's like hasn't got the fun of the physical interaction with the hardware, and it hasn't got the sort of the portability or the or upgradability of the computer software, or rather it. So, but I mean, that's to sort of give a disservice to it. I think it is a really interesting idea. I think the presentation of it is not very good at all. I completely agree with you. I think it really needs to be a lot more musically focused. It's an enormous undertaking that they're doing here. Because it's a whole software front end. It's countless amounts of products that they're going to have to make and support and create new ones for. I think Kickstarters who are going to take the plunge are going to have to be quite brave, I think, and have to put a lot of faith in it. I mean, but it does look really good. I mean, I was wondering, just on the most boring level of it, just as a very interesting way of doing, as a patch bay, as a digitally controlled patch bay. I know those.
Yeah, absolutely. But
I
it'll
know
do
those
CV
things
as well,
do
I believe.
It do CV, and and to be able just to sort of just route everything any way you want, it's really impressive. But I think, from the marketing point of view, and also, I mean, it just looks rubbish, really. Not rubbish. It's just so boring looking. You want at least some sort of lights or something fancy going on, but it looks just like the most sort of industrial, bland, boring box for something so potentially exciting. Should be orange.
Yeah. Orange, you think? Well, I refer you back to this page where we've actually got, I think there is, look, it's got lights on the front, I think, or is that just a piece of yellow card? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I don't know, Rich. I mean, there was the SSL X patch, which was really good, but wasn't DC coupled, and it was DSP powered, I think. So you couldn't use it for CV, so it didn't have that potential. And that was really good, but it just didn't, and that was also expensive. I think it was about £1,000 per 8x8 matrix. So this actually works out considerably cheaper than that, and potentially. I mean, do you find, oh God, I wish I didn't have this patch bay, I wish I could just route things more easily, or do you like the physicality of it?
I don't use this stuff enough to say, except that this is an odd kind of, I have product identity issues like Gaz is having with this thing. But I can see its value. People have tried the automating of analog patches before. You wire your whole system to this central box that then software routes everything for you. And I think that the systems in which that makes the most sense are huge post-production style desk rooms where you've got sources coming from all over the place, and you really do have a fixed installation. And then the question becomes, do you really want to bet your entire studio's connections on a device that you bought on Kickstarter? And I don't mean to denigrate Kickstarter in any way when I say that, but it's just that a company that can afford to route that many inputs can afford to buy the damn thing at retail. So This thing really better do a bunch of unique stuff and do it better than anybody else's that exists, first of all. And second, I don't quite get, if I had a modular synth, I think the last thing I would want to do is hardwire all of its connections to a software box. It just doesn't strike me as what the fun of operating a hardware synth is about, is sitting there at my computer and routing everything on a TV screen. So that whole concept of it routing CVs and hosting synthesizers and integrating into your music workflow, I don't get it. Now, it may be really cool, and maybe somebody could sit down here and show me why it's like the bee's knees, as they used to say. But right now, I have a little problem with concept identity, but as an enormous multi-point router, it might be useful to places like huge film post facilities and places where you really have to get a huge number of signals from point A to point B easily.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I suppose the only other thing that kind of almost nearly existed but didn't quite make it was Copper LAN, which was a Ethernet-based transport where you could just plug in various interfaces and it would kind of go, I'm here, I've got 8 outputs, you know, I'll go wherever you want. And I suppose that makes sense because you're just routing between devices with essentially a single Cat6 or Cat5e wire or whatever. So I take your point about the idea that if somebody's got that kind of cache, they're just going to drop that cache and it needs to work. But I suppose
on the most reliable thing you can find. You know, a company with a huge basis in this sort of switching technology. That's why some of these companies, especially like in Hollywood, that have been around since like the 1950s, still continue to do business because they've built so much confidence in the product line.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about that. I suppose in terms of modular, though, I mean, you might be in a situation where you've got a touring rig, you want to use your modular stuff live, but you don't want to have to be constantly repatching. You know, there might be aspects of it that you want to be hands-on, and you could keep those manual, but there could be other aspects that would be repeatable and what have you, right?
You mean instead of just bringing backing tracks like everybody does now?
Yeah, I suppose.
I guess you could do that, yeah.
Yeah,
and it's also
sorry.
And it's also kind of weird that and we throw in a couple of synthesizers as well, you know. Well, Oberheim filters, you know, they just sort of. And by the way, you can also have synthesizer modules. I mean, it seems a very huge project, and they haven't really sort of made clear why they can build a great synthesizer as well. I mean, just on top of it, you know, the icing on the cake. Oh, we also have synthesizer. It's kind of
it seems a bit secondary.
Iffy to me.
I think the thing about the synthesizer cards is they're essentially just using the routing capabilities of the chip. So they're not worrying about the scaling of the, the pots and the connections. It's just like slot the card in. You've got a pair of 3340 oscillators, or you've got a SEM filter, or you've got that kind of stuff. You don't have, which may, I agree now thinking about it more, it may in some instances be useful to have that, but most people kind of want to display their synthesizer large S, you know, as part of their thing, rather than it's all in that box there, which looks like a kind of a drawer from a touring rack system where I keep my DI boxes. I suppose I get. I
don't know what the audience is for this product, really. That's my main problem.
Right. Yep.
Just
and they
like,
need. Yeah.
Like Rich said, you know, if you really need that digital patching capability of analog sources and stuff, you're probably not a Eurorack freak, you know, with your Dupfer system somewhere. You're probably in a big professional studio, or you have 30 synthesizers like Thorsten, who wants to connect them all to Cubase and switch and do this sort of stuff. I don't see a market for it.
Okay, interesting. Rich, you look like you might be gagging to speak there, but I could have misread because it's a very tiny thing.
I was just thumbs up about what Eric was saying.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing is, you know, let's not forget, we've also got AVB, which you can hook up a bunch of Motu devices, which are also DC coupled. I mean, the difficulty then becomes, you know, how you're controlling all of that attenuation and stuff, but it's possible you could use stuff like Expert Sleeper. So it is there. It's just, I guess it's not an integrated system, and I've not experienced using AVB anywhere yet, and I would really like to try it. Eric, have you actually have you tried the AVB system and see how that works?
Yes, I tried it when I reviewed a Moto interface, and it worked. Yes, and you got patching capabilities there as well, so you could and also you know the iConnectivity audio interfaces, they also have this kind of functionality where you could hook up a couple of them and do a small version of what this is with these audio interfaces.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, I think it would probably work out probably a bit more expensive once you pile up 2 or 3 of those, and then you have to have the host computer and all of that sort of thing. Yeah. Oh, well, it's interesting. I wasn't sure because it was either going to be one of those things that people went, yeah, this is absolutely amazing. I can really see it, or not. And this is... And this is it. So it's on the Kickstarter. The company are Anatel Electronics, another Dutch company, interestingly. So there seems to be quite a lot of interesting technology coming out of Holland. It hasn't really kind of got started yet, so still got 27 days to go. I hope they make it, because I would like to see it kind of properly realised. Because I think that's the thing. It just feels a bit like it's too. There's all these tiny little awards for cards and stuff. They should have just gone in 16 step. 16 system, a 32 system, a 256 system, and maybe made one of the what do they call them, the rewards, the Kickstarter rewards things to be these synthesizer cards as well. That might have made more sense, but hey, I guess that's just the way it goes. So
Nick, your show will be the benchmark for this project. You kind of advertise the idea now to the world, and we'll see how the Kickstarter campaign will proceed. Will it be a huge rush? And we will have, during the show, maybe we even have some more backers coming in. Hey, you guys out there, back it now, live on the show.
Yeah, not so much. I'm looking now. But there is a bit of a delay. There is a bit of a delay on the feed, so who knows? I don't think it's that much of a delay. Okay, right. Did you see this one that Korg on the Nintendo tip? As we saw before, they did the was it DSi that they were first on? This is on Peter Kern's CDM link. It's been spotted the Nintendo Switch console, and they're bringing Nintendo Gadget to that, the gadget to that, which looks pretty cool. I think I had a little video to play here, which was a bit kind of. Let me see whether this will work. So you use your controllers either side, and you move notes around, which is not perhaps the most musical thing, but as we know, Gadget is a great thing. I know, Gaz, you've been a big fan of it. We've heard, and there's lots of great devices on there. So there must be CPU to spare. I'll start with you, Gaz, because I know you're a fan of Gadget and you're a gamer. So what's not to like, eh?
And a fan of Nintendo. And yeah, I had the MS-20 on the Nintendo DS, and that was really good fun. In fact, I should get it out. It's in the drawer somewhere. It's perfectly usable. It's really good. I think I think it looks really, really cool, because one thing Nintendo are experts at are interfacing. So I'm really interested to see, because of course the Switch works as a touchscreen as well. So really, you should be able to do all of the stuff you can do with the iPad version of it. Plus, you've got these extra controllers as well. So I think it could be like better on the Switch than on any of the other platforms. I'm really interested in this. I really want to get my hands on one to try it out. I think it's also very interesting because very few serious music making tools. I mean, some people might argue that Gadget isn't serious, but I think it is. I think you can do really good stuff on it. Has made that transition over to the console, to the living room. There's been kind of sort of DJ sort of type games and various other bits and bobs, but there was one, wasn't there, on PlayStation years ago, and a lot of people actually got into music production. I think there was a certain amount of people who went to Fruity Loops, who kind of came through a PlayStation. I can't remember what that's called, but considering how popular consoles are, we've seen relatively very few music creation apps. So this is really interesting, and also I think it could be the thing that the Switch needs to sort of pull people onto the platform there as well. I think to think of it as a standalone Gadget sort of device could justify the cost, possibly. I think this is really exciting. I'm really, really keen to see this.
Yeah, I suppose we've seen, music apps as being kind of quite a big gateway into adoption for new technology. I mean, I'm not a gamer. I mean, the last thing I had was the Nintendo Game Boy. So I don't know, Rich. I'm guessing you're probably not much of a gamer either. But I mean, the Korg Gadget is a special case, and Korg apps themselves, really. I mean, they've had a real history of being first and also sort of being best for being first as well. Certainly on iOS, some of their early apps were just, were genius, and they really did help define and create the ecosystem around that platform. You're muted. Now you can take a drink, and it's your birthday, so you can take a drink. Hey!
Oh, thank God. No, but seriously, folks, I like the Core Gadget software, and they make a lot of really cool sounds available to people, and it's a sort of a fun music making world, and it actually accepts input from my MPE devices very nicely. I'm quite happy about that. And if they want to run it on Nintendo too, God bless them. You know, like this is part of what companies do. They leverage the existing technology into as many existing and new devices as possible. I think Dave would be a good source on this, given that they've chosen to focus some of their attention to the Reason platform and rack extensions. So this is, pardon me, this is software business, and it's a good business, and that's some good software. So people with this device might have fun using it, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
I think that's true. I don't think the Switch is available till spring, or certainly this application. I know.
Cool. Oh,
yeah. Non-Eric, what are your thoughts? Are you much of a gamer?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Currently, Battlefield, gamer only, a little bit of Unreal Tournament, and yes, I'm a big gamer, and I think it could be a great excuse to get a Switch, because I think they do really good games. I love the Nintendo stuff, and I have to repeat what the other guests have said. I love the COG gadgets. You know, I'm still playing around with the IMS 20 on my iPad occasionally, because it's really so close to the original experience. Because I used my second band, we only had MS-20 and MS-10 and SQ-10, so back to the old days. And I love the iPolice 6, all of that stuff. It's great, and maybe I can have this for Christmas, maybe. Because I need it for Musitalk, for my studio.
Allowable expense.
To my wife, this is not a gaming console. This is my music stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Good thought. I just haven't got the patience for gaming anymore. And I'm also well aware of the amount of time it can absorb. And I just don't feel like I've got it. I mean, I prefer to sort of just veg out and not actually do anything, let alone concentrate on stuff. So I tend to not gravitate towards games. You know, maybe I'll get. Although actually, that's one thing I wanted to mention. That when I was at We Are Robots at the weekend, last week, we had. I was on a panel. We were talking about the future of music technology, and there's some great guests on there. And I was sat next to Rupert Hine, who is an awesome dude. I mean, he's like proper old school producer, kind of like George Martin. He did his first record when he was 16, you know, and astonishing. You know, I'm hoping to get an interview with him because he said he would do one. So I'd really like to talk to him. He produced all sorts of stuff. In fact, Underworld as well as Tina Turner. I mean, really varied stuff. Anyway, that's beside the point. But while I was there, I saw the Alive in VR Ableton interface, and I put on for the first time like a proper, it was a HTC Vive 3D virtual reality thing, and I did try and the latency was non-existent. It was just amazing. So you were kind of like hitting drums and moving things around out of the interface and triggering clips and stuff. I mean, I wasn't fluent with it, but it was just really, really weird, because you've got subconscious, conscious, and then this other alternative consciousness, which is you in a VR headset, while there's somebody outside of that consciousness standing next to you going, yeah, what you want to do is now this. If you reach, and it was really kind of mentally very confusing. So maybe I'm just not built for those sort of games and that side of stuff. I don't know, but
that's an interesting point there. I mean, like, because Twitch type games, you know, really fast games, any latency in your system, you know, the gamers are really super sensitive about any lag at all. So frame rates have to be completely smooth, completely fluid. So that's quite an interesting aspect then. So, you know, that if you've got that going on, that will then, I presume, make for a musically possible interface, because, you know, again,
definitely,
you know, any latency is a deal breaker.
Well, it was interesting because when I was talking to Jim Simons, he was saying that, you know, it runs at 90 frames a second, you know, and he had this high-end PC to spit out the card output, but whatever, beside the point. I was sort of thinking, what's this for? You know, I mean, And one of the ideas he's had is obviously you can have other people enter your 3D environment to enjoy the performance with you in your world that you create. I mean, this was just, the thing about the Alive in VR thing is it's got the Ableton interface, but you could just as easily see it working really well with generic MIDI control and faders and doing things that involve you moving around in a space. I mean, it really blows the mind in many ways and in the possibilities, but also in the operation of it. I don't know. Non-Eric, have you tried any VR stuff? I mean, I find it really weird, but I'm just not wired that way.
No, unfortunately not once. Only I think in the end of the 80s. No, beginning of the 80s.
Yeah.
In this big
Sometime
shopping in London, they had this big thing where you could, with this big, really rudimentary. No, I haven't. No experience, unfortunately. I heard that you need really, really fast hardware to bring the latency down, and some people get dizzy, puke. I don't know. Unfortunately.
If you do get to go to Loop, I'm pretty sure he'll be there, so you should try it out. It's well worth it. It's a very hard thing to video, though. It's a bit like kind of explaining pictures on a radio because you're going from 2D to 3D. Yeah. I don't know, Rich. Have you tried any VR stuff? Have I asked you this question before? I can't remember if I have.
I don't remember if you've asked me the question before, but I did have a VR headset on once, briefly, and just kind of like looked around with it on and stuff. I didn't have it on for very long, and I didn't participate in any sort of action game or anything like that. It was stunning in how responsive it was and how it looked and how it did feel like you were in some sort of immersed reality within what you could see. And I'm quite interested in it, but I don't have a lot more to say about it.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I think the thing for me that I find kind of interesting, because one of the other things that came up on this panel was the notion of, we should move away from technology and get more into collaboration, just work with human beings using technology. And that raised the point of, why hasn't it happened so that there is technology? We've had the Steinberg VST Connect, which it doesn't quite work. It's a bit too IT management to kind of get set up, and there's too much latency. But the idea of stepping into a virtual environment and working with somebody in a virtual environment remotely somehow, that has legs, because I think that kind of opens up but then you've also got the idea of problems with latency with that as well. Sorry, Non-Eric, you were just about to
as you just mentioned, VST Connect, that is actually the new name of the plugin that we developed at Digital Musician some years ago. Actually an invention from Charlie Steinberg, the man himself. And what we found is that at the end of the day, it was less the technical issues that was keeping people from collaborating online. It was more that it's very, very hard for people, strangers, in a virtual world, even if it's just on a platform like Digital Musician, to communicate about music. And so there seems to be not as easy as we all think. Yeah, you can communicate on Facebook, share your cat photos. That's easy. We can talk about political issues and write comments and stuff like that. But when it comes to describing what you want in a musical experience, in a song, in a track, that seems to go a lot deeper. We had people really having problems communicating what they were looking for when they were looking for other people to make music online. And I think there seems to be a misconception. We all believe that, obviously, what a great idea. Work with some people online via the net with strangers and create great collaborations and great new music. But I think there's a couple of platforms out now, and there has been the Ohm Studios and other attempts, but it never really got off the ground. And I think it's because there is a fundamental problem that has nothing to do with technology, but far more with musicians and people having to communicate on music, and it's kind of requires a relationship. And that's why lots of big artists, they always use the same musicians for decades. They work together because they have this sort of intimate relationship that you cannot recreate on the internet.
It's a very valid point. I think I kind of had a similar notion, which was it was maybe more down to confidence, that there's something very personal about playing a riff to somebody or singing or doing something without ever having met them. Session musicians must have to deal with it lots of times, particularly if they're working with new clients, where it's you're putting it out there, and you've got to be able to cope with the notion of it not being exactly what that other person wants, or how the reaction you get. And if you're ostensibly, and that's why we all work, not all of us, but lots of people work in their little home studios on electronic music because they can make it, because they find the whole collaborative thing either too stressful, or it doesn't work quite so well for them, or they haven't found the right people to work with. I know. What do you think, Rich? I mean, you get various musicians in. I mean, do you often get musicians in that nobody's ever worked with before?
That nobody's ever worked with before.
On the session, I'm thinking.
I have. I mean, students that needed to record the violin demo that gets them into college, stuff like that. I mean, typically in my professional work, no, they've been recorded by somebody before, albeit perhaps not like you thought. We once worked with a very famous group that had hit records that admitted during a session that they had never played together in a recording studio before, but and they shall remain nameless.
Huh.
I don't know.
I suppose the thing is
I don't know if
about
virtual reality is where I want to write music, but part of the problem with the communication aspect, which I, by the way, agree with Non-Eric on very much so here, is that we now have, in the democratization of the music making process across the last 3 decades, we have eliminated training from the equation. And so what you have is a whole lot of people who have all kinds of various self-taught backgrounds, mostly self-taught backgrounds, and some of them are informed by various schools and college programs, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years. But you don't have a common language that people use typically to communicate musical ideas. Whereas before, say, 1970 or 1965, pretty much all of the musicians before that time had studied music in some sort of formalized environment that enabled them to have a conversation about it that sort of made sense to them.
Interesting.
So some of this is the inevitable result of the democratization of the music making process. And I'm not saying it's good or it's bad or it's indifferent, and I'm not pining away for the old days, but that's just what it is to me.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a really valid point. Yeah. Wow. Okay, that went in a direction I didn't expect, but really, really good. I would like to say that We Are Robots was a great show. It was a little bit underattended, but if you're in London next year, hopefully it'll happen again. There was all sorts of stuff. We've got some more videos coming up. I think got Look My No Computer gave us a whiz around the Hackaday Village, where there's just loads of art pieces and installations. It's kind of fun. So yeah, I think that feels like quite a good place to stop. There seem to be lots of subjects on my ever-increasing list of topics that we haven't got around to talking about that just keep getting off the end. Is there anything there that anybody really wants to discuss, or shall we wrap it?
Wrap it. Wrap the subject.
Wrap it up, man.
Wrap the show.
Oh,
Wrap it.
Yeah, okay. Well, that seems fair enough. I should point out, you may have seen me drinking from my marvellous Sonicstate mug. There are T-shirts and other merch designs. You can get to them via the Sonicstate site. You're more than welcome to help yourself. Maybe a Christmas gift coming up. I mean, no, we're a bit early. We're still, 50 days out. I feel a bit awful actually even referring to that season just yet. But hey, I'm trying to sell stuff. What can I do? So, yeah, but thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Rich, once again, a very happy birthday to you. And I hope you have a lovely rest of the day where you're going to be just treating yourself, pampering yourself, not having to think about work. Am I right or wrong?
Should be a pretty easy day for me today. Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
And
well,
thank you for the well wishes, everybody.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. And also, Mr. Non-Eric from Muso Talk TV. What's coming up on the channel that people might want to watch out for?
I'm not quite sure yet what we'll have on Monday.
Choices.
We'll see.
Is that choices or bad organisation? Too many choices.
Bad organisation.
Oh, I was going to ask you. So the Hackintosh system that you were talking about. How, I mean, generally speaking, what was it like? Was it a nightmare or was it actually kind of fairly smooth? I'm guessing. Did you get a person to set it up for you, or did you have to get your hands dirty? Just wanted to quiz you about that quickly. I forgot to ask earlier.
Nightmare, yes. A person helping me, Yes. Is it worth it? Yes. My problems more or less came down to that I wanted to use my UAD twin Apollo interface via Thunderbolt. And
Okay.
Thunderbolt is not really well supported on the PC platform. And that caused a lot of problems. And then I made a stupid mistake that I connected my 4K display via HDMI and then didn't realize that it was switching down to 24 frames. Because of the limited bandwidth of the HDMI connection. And that's why my mouse kept lagging. And I thought it was a problem with the computer, but it wasn't. So since now it runs no problem, and it's been a solid experience. And yeah, once I got it up and running, it's been running fine ever since.
And how much? What sort of spec machine are we talking about? And what was your saving? Do you think? Have you got those kind of figures to hand?
Yeah, I think equivalent a Mac would be a 5K Retina. So to look at the screen, I think it's even faster. I think it's I have a i7 4.2 gigahertz and a GeForce 1060 in it, and that's only 60 gig of RAM. But I think it's probably faster even than the fastest iMac. I'm not quite sure. I still have to do a show. Maybe that's something for Monday, where I sort of, as I explained, I'm still trying to looking at benchmarking the system and see how fast it is. But
Interesting.
It's very, very fluid.
Interesting. Well, we're just about to drop some money on a new system here, just to handle this and also our video switching stuff. But it might well be possible to run OS X on it anyway. But I'll talk to you about that off camera. Anyway, Non-Eric Music Talk TV. Thank you very much for joining us, and everybody else. Thank you all for joining us. We can have a big wave goodbye and see you all in the not too distant future. Don't forget, another show next week. Do subscribe to the channel Sonicstate on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much. Hey folks, thank you for joining